So I'm doing a Bible study on the characters in Revelation, and I'm trying to peel back the layers of symbolism so you can know who these characters are, because if you don't know the characters, you don't really know the storyline. It's sort of like trying to read War and Peace, and you kind of need a cheat sheet next to you so you know who the characters are and how to be able to follow them in the story. But once you see, it becomes pretty plain who is who and what's happening. The book of Revelation is written in the Hebraic style, which uses a lot of symbolism, a lot of imagery. And so we have to kind of decode the symbols here, but it's not hard to do. It really isn't. It just kind of painstaking because there's so many symbols that we need to go through. So I want to look at what I call believers. All the people who are believers who are going to be resurrected or raptured by the second coming of Christ. Okay, by the time he returns and sets up his kingdom, basically at the seventh trumpet, anybody who's been resurrected at that time in this what's called first resurrection is going to be a part of Christ's kingdom and is considered a Christian. Okay, because you can't be resurrected then unless you're a believer, because there's only 3 times when people are resurrected. Okay, that is resurrected into an eternal, immortal state. The first one was Jesus when he rose from the dead. Okay, and all this is in 1 Corinthians 15, and it doesn't talk about raptures here. We're talking about resurrections. So 1 Corinthians 15 talks about Jesus is the first fruits of the resurrection. Okay, and then all who are his at his coming. So anybody who belongs to Christ will have been resurrected from the dead by the time Jesus comes and sets up his kingdom at the 7th trumpet. And then Paul goes on to say, then comes the end. Okay, and that's, after the millennium, after Christ has brought everything into subjection, then he hands the kingdom to his Father. And what that's hinting at is the third resurrection, that third group, which is the great white throne judgment, when all unbelievers will be resurrected at that time and judged at that time. It's basically a first fruits harvest, a main harvest, and the gleanings. So Jesus is the first fruits. Those who are his at his coming are the main harvest in this type, and the gleanings are going to be at the great white throne judgment. What we're talking about now are believers, and there's a lot of groups of believers because they all are going to be resurrected at Christ's return. The first one that Revelation talks about is John. He's actually the scribe for the vision here, and he refers to himself as brother and partner. The second group, I'm just going to refer to them as the 24 elders. They actually have other names or other descriptors in the book of Revelation. This is the first group of raptured saints. It's the male child who's going to be caught up to God and to his throne, the one who's going to rule all nations with a rod of iron along with Christ. All right, so this group is called kings and priests. They're also referred to as stars. They are the ones who are going to be coming with Jesus to deliver the messages to the 7 churches. They're the stars in Jesus' hand. Whenever a believer is glorified, they are now called a star. Jesus is the bright morning star, and believers are morning stars. There are also elders, the 24 elders. They're the male child, that firstborn male who will rule. They are also the child of Revelation 12. They are called heaven dwellers, called, chosen, and faithful, and they're part of the armies of heaven. The next group is the more mysterious group. That's the 144,000 of Israel. And these are the overcoming sons of God from the 12 tribes, and they will make up a second group of raptured sons, and they are called overcomers. And the letters to the 7 churches are written specifically to the 144,000 of Israel. These are their instructions for after we've been raptured. After this, the 24 elders have been raptured and they've passed off the ministry to the 144,000. The 144,000 have instructions, and that's in the letters to the 7 churches. I've done videos on this, and I think once you watch the videos, I think you will understand why we're not talking about church history here. Okay, we're not talking about things that happened historically. There is no church history in Revelation. It's all prophetic. They're also called the servants of our God. They are the 144,000 from the 12 tribes. They are the ones that John is instructed to count that are in the temple worshiping. They're redeemed from mankind. They're first fruits for God and the Lamb. They also are heaven dwellers. They also are called chosen and faithful, kings and priests, and armies of heaven. This next group are martyrs, and there are two groups of martyred believers. We have the martyrs of the harlot, and we have the martyrs of the beast. And the harlot will be destroyed, or that system is going to be taken down as soon as the beast arrives, because then the beast system or beast kingdom is going to come into play, and Satan no longer is going to be using that old Babylonian system, because he is going to have give authority to his son to rule and reign. So that old system goes away, and now we have the beast kingdom coming into play. And remember, the beast hates the harlot, and the 10 kings hate her too, and they're going to destroy her with fire, smoke, and sulfur. And that's on an hour that they've been given authority to do that, which happens to be the same hour, day, month, and year of the sixth trumpet. The hour in Revelation is a pivotal, key time, and it's literal. It's a literal hour. All time in Revelation is literal. If it's symbolic, it isn't helpful. God is very precise in the book of Revelation, and increments of time are meant to be taken literally. Other numbers, not so much. Other numbers can be symbolic, like the Holy Spirit, 7 spirits, 7 torches, 7 thunders, 7 horns, and 7 eyes. That's all symbolic. 24 elders, symbolic. But time is different. Time is literal. And if you take time literally, all of a sudden, these big vistas open up for you. We have fifth seal martyrs, who are the martyrs of the harlot, and then we have the martyrs of the beast, and they're beheaded. It's different how these martyrs die. But the martyrs are the souls under the altar. That's the fifth seal martyrs. They're the fellow servants and brothers, also fifth seal martyrs. The great multitude from every nation, from all tribes, peoples, and languages, also fifth seal. They're the saints. They're the prophets, saints and apostles and prophets, and that would include also the 2 witnesses. They are called heaven dwellers, and they are the souls of those who'd been beheaded. Now, the woman of Revelation 12 has a firstborn male son who's going to rule and reign. She also has other offspring. So the other offspring happens to be that third group of raptured saints that we see in Revelation 15. I call these the overcomers. They're the ones who overcome the beast. And other offspring is what these people are called. They're going to conquer the beast, its image, and the number of its name. So the martyrs of the harlot never have to worry about taking the beast or overcoming the beast, because they're killed before the beast begins to reign. After the beast begins to reign, then people will be martyred, and it's in their martyrdom that they overcome. And also there are people who are survivors who do not take the mark or worship the beast, and they are going to be raptured, and they are the woman's other offspring. We have another group of people who become believers after the beast begins to reign. And remember, there isn't another outpouring of the Holy Spirit after the beast begins to reign. And so these believers are instructed to fear God, to give him glory. And there are people who will do that even though they don't have the indwelling Holy Spirit. It's sort of like Old Testament saints who just believed God, they trusted in him, and it was accounted to them as being righteous, and they did their acts of righteousness, and God sees that, and they're going to be rewarded. I call these people the God-fearers, and they are those who fear God and give him glory. They are those who fear your name, as in they fear God's name. And there's a song about them in Revelation 15, who will not fear, O Lord, and glorify your name. And at the final 7th trumpet resurrection, in that resurrection will be those who fear him, small and great. And they are equated with the sheep of Matthew 25, when Jesus comes to sit on his throne and gather the nations before him and decide who goes into his kingdom and who doesn't. All right, now we're going to get to a sadder note. We're going to talk about apostate believers, and they actually are a group, and they're truly believers. That is, they've passed from death to life. They've been born from above. They, have the sealing of the Holy Spirit, but they deny the faith in their life. And nobody who is saved ever gets unsaved. You can't be unsaved, just like you can't be unborn. Once you're born, you're here, okay? And once you're saved, you're saved. That means you will never go to the lake of fire. But there is another place. It's called outer darkness, and that is a part of the eternal geography, as it were. And apostate believers will be those who are outside the holy city. They are saved, so they don't go into the lake of fire, but their names get blotted out of the book of life, so they can't enter the holy city. And remember, you have to have your name in the book of life in order to go into the holy city. So they're saved from eternal wrath, but they do not get to participate in the joys and glories of the eternal kingdom. Apostate believers are those who didn't conquer. In the letters to the 7 churches, they didn't conquer. We read about them in the letter to the church of Sardis, and their names are blotted out of the book of life. They are the unclean, detestable, or false, whose names are not found written in the Lamb's book of life. They are also called the dogs and sorcerers, the sexually immoral, the murderers and idolaters, and everyone who loves and practices falsehood. And I think the key word here is those who love and practice falsehood. And believe it or not, there are apostate believers who love and practice falsehood and also teach other people to do the same. This sad story is referred to in the book of Jude and also in 2 Peter. And there are Old Testament types and shadows of this group, including Balaam, the Old Testament prophet. And then we have false or compromised believers who are going to try to derail the believers who are here after us. That's in particular the 144,000. And we read about false apostles being sent and liars. We read about the Nicolaitans. These are the so-called church leaders who exercise control over God's people. Nicolaitanism is where you have someone who is the boss instead of Jesus, someone who is your authority or your head, who tells you what to do, who is able to control groups of people through this whole, it's the harlot system. It has a pyramid, okay, with power on top and control radiating downwards. So this is the Nicolaitan system. It's something that Jesus said that he hates. Also, Jezebel is a type representing false prophets who may actually be Christians who have gone down a bad path and are now encouraging real believers to believe basically the doctrines of demons. And then we have Balaam, who represents apostate believers who leads others into sin. And our final group of believers that I've already talked about in the category of women, the women of Revelation. This is the bride, and this is that company of believers who have made themselves ready after the millennium. And this includes all believers whose eternal home will be the New Jerusalem, the holy city. I think I can go ahead and talk about how Revelation refers to people in general. There's people, and then there are hybrids, okay, non-human people who are going to be present during the end times. And Revelation distinguishes the two groups. There are also real people who are wicked, and these wicked people will no doubt take the mark of the beast. They're going to follow after the beast. Okay, so there are people who are just people, people who are hybrids, and then real people who side with the beast in his kingdom. Okay, and if you side with the beast in his kingdom, you're going to be judged when the beast and the false prophet, all the fallen angels and so on are judged at Christ's return. And immediately your sentence is going to be to go into the lake of fire. If you're alive, if you're dead, you'll be resurrected at the great white throne judgment and thrown into the lake of fire at that time. Okay, so let's talk about people. And when I talk about people, I mean the sons of Adam. That their lineage can be traced back to Genesis 5. This is the book of Adam, the book of mankind. So in Revelation, when you see the tribes of the earth, you know we're talking about real people. Also, people from every tribe and language and people and nation. This is real people. Nations and the word mankind both refer to real people. I'm just going to mention this, that the hybrids, the people whose names were never written in the book of life, that is, they were never really people, they are referred to as the earth dwellers, or those who dwell on earth, or all who dwell on earth. Okay, if it said all peoples, languages, nations, and so on, we're referring to real people. If we talk about the earth dwellers, which is what the Septuagint, when it was speaking about giants, or the Genesis 6 hybrids, called them earthborn. We're talking about that same kind of hybrid, not real human entity. Okay, so in Revelation, they're referred to as earth dwellers, those who dwell on earth, all who dwell on earth, and so on. If you see that phrase, you know you're not talking about real people, you're talking about hybrids. And there's a lot of them out there. And there will be more coming. So check out my video on hybrids. All right, we also have wicked and or unsaved people. Not every unsaved person in this category is wicked, but these are people who are mentioned, and these are real people, okay? We have the kings of the earth, the kings of the whole world, the great ones, generals, the rich, powerful, mankind, the destroyers of the earth, worshipers of the beast, whoever receives the mark of his name. And we're talking real people here, not earth-born or earth dwellers, because all who dwell on earth are going to worship the beast. All the hybrids will end up worshiping the beast, but not all real people will. But those who do, whoever takes the mark of his name, those are people who will be cast into the lake of fire when Christ returns. We have the kings from the east, the 10 kings, the merchants of the earth, the merchants of these wares, the shipmasters, seafaring men, sailors, and all whose trade is on the sea. And then after the millennium, after Satan is released, we have this other person whose name is Gog. Actually, it's not his name, it's his title. He's a leader of some kind, but he is a person, because remember, Satan cannot rule the earth. He always has to rule through people, because the dominion of the earth was given to mankind. We also have a category of what I call Jews, or, people who would fit in that category. Okay, Israel, Jewish people, whatever. And there are subcategories for that bigger category of Jews. And the first one is the Jews who say they are Jews but are not, but who lie, those who are of the synagogue of Satan. These are the same kind of Jews that rejected Jesus at his first coming. Remember, in the book of John, Jesus talked about the Jews, and he didn't talk about them in a good way. But when he talked to Nathanael, he said, "Behold, an Israelite, indeed, in whom there is no guile." So an Israelite is considered different from a Jew. So in Revelation, to be called a Jew means you're one of those people who doesn't believe in Jesus. But if you're one of the 12 tribes of Israel, well, now you're a believer, especially those who've been sealed out of the 12 tribes. So the 144,000 of Israel come from the 12 tribes of Israel. They're believers. We also have the woman of Revelation 12 that I've talked about before, especially with reference to the remnant of Israel that flees into the wilderness. She's going to be from Israel, Jewish, whatever. And then when the voice from heaven says, "Come out of her, my people," this is actually talking to that remnant of Israel that it's time to flee into the wilderness. So my people is also a reference to those who are of Israel or are Jews. And then, of course, we have the two witnesses who have their own little subcategory, too, of names that they're called. And again, like the Holy Spirit had the number 7 associated with it, the 7 spirits, the 7 flames, the 7 torches, the 7 horns, the 7 eyes, the 7 thunders. The two witnesses have the number 2 attached to them. They're the 2 witnesses, the 2 olive trees, the 2 lampstands, and the 2 prophets. And I believe these are Moses and Elijah. We have another category of people, and these are the people who are going to be living during the millennium. And there's going to be overcoming people who don't succumb to Satan and Gog after Satan's been released and gets this whole bunch of people who are, rebels against Christ. They overcome and they don't, side with Satan and Gog. And then there are the rebellious ones who actually do side with Satan and do follow Gog and try to attack the glorious city, or whatever it's called there in Revelation chapter, I think it's 20. So the ones who conquer actually become God's sons. And that's Revelation 21:7. So Jesus gets a bride and God still has sons. Okay, and those people who come out of the millennium, who do not, who actually overcome, don't follow Satan and Gog, they become God's sons in the new earth and the new age that's coming. And the rebels are going to go into the lake of fire. That's Revelation 21:8. And then we have this bad person, this leader that's referred to as Gog. And these are all ones who will be living during the millennium. And they have their own little story too. That's included in Revelation. And then we have the immortal people who are going to be living on the new earth. This is after the millennium. So we have the ones who conquer during the millennium. That is those who are going to become the sons of God on the new earth. We have, and they're called God's sons. There's nations and there's kings who are on the new earth. And I think the ones who are going to be kings on the new earth are the either people who came out of the millennium as conquerors and overcomers, as well as people who've been resurrected, who, even though they didn't know Jesus and didn't, maybe they never heard about him, but they lived in a righteous way and they lived according to the light that was given to them, that they will be able to rule on the new earth over the nations after the millennium in that new eternal age. All right, so I think I'll stop with this video, and in the next video, we're going to talk about heavenly beings and holy beings and probably some nefarious beings as well. And I hope you find this little series interesting. I think knowing who the characters are and how they relate to one another and what's going on in the story really makes this whole thing come alive. The whole end time story of Revelation is actually so much bigger and it's more complex. It's far more interesting than this basic storyline that we've been handed. That's just this piecemeal of this is what the end times looks like without a real thorough understanding of all the things that are happening in the book of Revelation. It's just so exciting. So let me know what you think, and then we'll see you on another video. Till then, have a blessed day.